My name is Kurt Volker. I'm the executive director of the McCain Institute, and we are delighted to be here again for our third Tbilisi International Conference.
Mr. President, this is the third Tbilisi International Conference, and you've been very gracious to come here each time. We really appreciate your support, your welcome, and the commitment that you've shown. When we first talked about this idea of having a Tbilisi International Conference, it was to keep the international community focused on Georgia as a European country, and to keep Georgia's commitment alive, that it has this passion for being a part of the transatlantic community as well. I want to start just by asking you, talk a little bit about Georgia as a nation. Just give us your perceptions about the values of this country, what is important to Georgians, where Georgia belongs.
Well, let me first of all thank you personally and all the folks that have been engaged in this great effort to make this intellectual and discussion happen in Tbilisi for these years. And the outcome of this conference, actually something that we come to, has been a part of further discussion in the interim between the events. So it's a great exercise. It's a great gathering of people who discuss and who strategize on future. And thank you for doing this for us and for doing this for Georgia. Well, it's a pretty challenging question. I didn't think that I would have to answer such a difficult question, but let me try. First of all, it's difficult because we are a nation that has a long-standing history. And so the history and the identity that we represent is the part of our current, today's existence. We live with our traditions, we live with our past and cherish it in many respects. But I will not go in those details of who we were. I think we should talk about what are our challenges today and what we have to overcome. As a nation which is targeted to the values that we now currently call European, or we call them Western, or we attribute them to the civilization of the Western world, my country has been a part of this culture, and our culture has been based on those values. The values of individuality, the values of freedom, the values of the right of an individual to express itself in the society. Also, I think pretty actively we've been a nation that is defending itself and trying to maintain its identity, to try to carve its identity within the historic process, which was basically targeted towards destruction of the uniqueness of this nation with its literature, with its poetry, with its alphabet. So what are the challenges right now? I think the challenge now is to grow from an individual, freedom-based, human values-based European culture into a European state. And that cannot happen without acknowledging the concept of the state, what the state means. And we were just discussing with David just before I came here, we were discussing what is the state, a contemporary state, and what are the main factors and parameters of the contemporary state. And one of the main things is that we have to learn to accept the difference in this big unity. We have to learn to be tolerant to different people, to different ideas. In a way, this tolerance is a part of our culture because the differences that have been existing before, the difference in religion, the difference in ethnic differences, Georgia as a culture were able to embrace them in a unified Georgia historically. But now we are dealing with another kind of differences, and we have to learn to accept them. This is not only difference in religion, but this is difference in thinking, in way of outlook. This is not only ethnic differences, but it's also difference of the choice of the sexual identity. This is not only difference in your geopolitical views, but it's also the difference parties have together towards each other. So the concept that Georgia is much bigger than my identity, than identity of a politician, or identity of a political party, or identity of some kind of identity, but it's a part of the bigger identity, which is Georgia. And we have to accept the fact that the different people are also part of this culture. And Georgia will not exist and could not exist without those differences. If we don't celebrate them, if we don't give them possibility to flourish and develop, if we restrain them, that this will be a collapse of our nation if we restrain the differences. That concept has to be acknowledged, but not only through declarations or through legislation, but through the feeling of the citizenship that we have to build with each other. So I think that this is the challenge that is now within our culture, and that's a challenge that is challenged not only by Georgians, but it's a challenge that is imposed on Georgia from our northern neighbor, because ideological confrontation lies exactly there. What Russian propaganda tries to build, be it Georgia, be it in other places, is to create an acceptance of different religion, of different ways of life, of different attitudes. We are in the same battle right now to understand that Georgia is beyond everything. We all know those differences and is embracing those differences. I hope we'll overcome that.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mr. President. I think that message of a strong identity based on tolerance and diversity of ideas is a very powerful message. What concerns you that makes you bring this up right now? What is a worry that makes this important to stress at this moment?
Well, let's start from something that I've already mentioned. This is a discourse that, not the discourse, but this is the issue that is imposed on Georgia, on Georgian political environment, on Georgian social environment, from something that we call Russian propaganda. If something that Russians have learned and grown recently is that they are more qualified in producing with soft power, and this propaganda is trying to build than acceptance of differences, and try to build the alternative process to our Western cause. You will hear this everywhere. I mean, going to West will decline your identity. Becoming more European will destroy your traditions. Becoming a part of a different political culture will make you lose who you are. These are the problems that are planted in minds and thoughts and emotions of people all around the world. And naturally, Georgia is one of the places that those ideas are paratrooped to. And we have witnessed a couple of cases that I would say we had to respond. We tried to respond to those challenges. But this is one part. Another part is our political culture, the culture of acceptance. And I would say that we had a good record in this respect as well. I would say the previous process was a process where the leading party, the most powerful party in Georgia, had complete authority to have the right to choose, to have the right to decision, to have the right to dictate the future of its nation. This was unacceptable to me and my fellows who were in opposition with the previous government. Unfortunately, I wouldn't say that this issue has been overcome. The discussions within the leading party are still based on this feeling that the truth lies in the number of the votes that you have in the parliament. In a way, that's true, but I think we should go further and try to embrace more, and the acknowledgement that the biggest failure of a party in the government is to create an environment for a weak opposition, for the opposition to be very weak and inefficient. This understanding has to be developed, that a democracy is a multi-party process, and you have to win in a multi-party process and not be the only one, but be the best within the many. So I think that those processes, they have to be discussed, they have to be spoken out, they have to be very actively debated. And I believe that as a culture which is based on diversity, by its roots, we will come to that conclusion.
How do you feel that Georgia is doing
on some of those issues? It's been 25 years of U.S.-Georgia relations, but of independence, of building a democracy in Georgia. One could argue, you look around former Soviet Union countries, Georgia's remarkably doing well. But if you compare to standards in other parts of Europe, some people might say we'd like to see Georgia compared to those standards, and we'd like to see Georgia do more. Where do you see Georgia in this spectrum?
Well, it's not where we see, but what is our ambition. And our ambition is clearly that we are an Eastern European country, and we have to go to the standards that put our country in the Eastern European context and into Eastern European family of nations. The fact that in some parameter we are better than others doesn't really completely answer the challenges that the nation has in respect to its ambitions and its environment. We are a country that has a very complicated relations with our northern neighbor. Parts of our country are occupied, so we have to be very resilient in protecting our identity. And the part of this resilience is to be a part of European political culture, of the European family of nations. So our challenge is much more complicated. Our security is based on the fact how really we can build a democratic process here. So being better than some, or let's say majority of the ex-Soviet countries is not exactly the benchmark that will lead us to a prosperous and stable society and security. In many respects, we are the best in that pool, but we have to be the part of the different pool. We have to be we have to state ourselves to European standards.
Do you feel that you are getting the level of acceptance and support from Europe and from the United States and from NATO that you need to be successful?
Well, let me be diplomatic and say that I would wish that this support was dozens times more. Let me be even more diplomatic and say that I believe that Georgia deserves much more support from EU, from NATO, because we have shown our commitment to those values, and we have shown as a society that we are ready to stand up for these values here in Georgia, confronting Russian influence and pressure, and not only here in Georgia, but we are ready to stand on the battlefields where our men and women stand with their lives for the values that we just described. So I wish the support was dozen times more, faster, but I do acknowledge the environment that is in both of the unions. There is a complicated phase. We have to be patient. We have to be patient because this is our destiny choice. But at the same time, for sure.
And what would that look like? So if you say, okay, we'd like to feel more support, we'd like more engagement from Europe or NATO or the United States, what would that look like? How would that manifest itself in a way that fulfills what you see as Georgia's destiny?
Well, these are formats of our more intensive cooperation, more intensive partnerships, and there are dozens of the formats that have been discussed through the years. More active engagement, embracement in the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, I mean, Georgia as a country has been given an open door policy, and the decision stays stable on the decision that Georgia will become a member, will become the member of the alliance. But I believe that more active steps could be taken, even starting from 2008. In a way, the fact that in 2008 the occupation of Georgia did not receive enough treatment has been resulting in what has happened in Ukraine in 6 years after that. So we have intensive partnership formats with NATO, with EU, but I believe the process of accepting the reality that Georgia in NATO is a more stable environment, that Georgia being more actively embraced in EU is a better solution for European security and stability, as well as European development. I think that this has still to come.
Yeah. And I know we didn't preview this, but as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about the occupied territories as well. Is enough being done to call attention to this? What recommendations do you have for Europe, for the United States, concerning the occupied territories and their reintegration into Georgia? And what recommendations, frankly, do you have for Georgia about how it approaches the occupied territories?
Well, unfortunately, there are not many international mechanisms left on in the toolbox for approaching this issue. And we have the UMM mission, which is doing great, but we have lost other mechanisms through which we could control the environment on the occupied territories. At the same time, we are all very cautious to react on every concrete and individual case of violation of the rights of our citizens on the occupied territories, or the new steps of borderization that is happening. The Russian narrative in this respect is a very clear and well shaped. They are doing this diligently, time after time, trying to break our morale and our resilience, trying to get us used to the fact that they are occupying the territories, trying to drag us to the negotiations table with the slogan that this is new reality, accept it, and let's talk from this point. The resilience of our nation is in the morale of never accepting this historic unfairness, never being ready to negotiate with this fact that these territories are lost. This is really that will break the environment and will finally bring us to success. It is not visible right now in the nearest future. At the same time, a stable morale that will not accept any kind of negotiation on the occupation issue, that will wait for the window of opportunities to reintegrate the unity of Georgia. This is the case that has brought success in relationship with Russia to other nations, and we are looking at those experiences and we are getting the hope from these experiences. So react every time, engage partners every time. That's what we are doing, that's what we have to do in future. Try to get the highest negotiations, highest comments on this every time. Put it on the top of the discussion issues with our Western partners all the time, and never get used.
And what would cause Russia to change its view? So it's occupied these territories since 2008. What would cause Russia to change its view that this is a good idea?
Well, I guess it's a question that has been once answered on the case of the collapse of the socialist bloc in Europe, and all the chain of independent nations, sovereign nations that has been created, and the whole pool of those nations that have been creating since that for the last 30 years, and the prosperity that this has brought to the peoples of Europe, as well as more stability in Europe that has been reached. the attitude towards Russia was clear. It was West which was trying to push on this agenda without confrontation, without getting to war, but trying to push on this agenda stably and to the target of reaching the success. I believe with the same policy, eventually we will prevail. But Russians have to know we will never accept a different attitude.
Let me take you back to your opening comments and ask a question about that as well too. So Georgia is in the process right now of considering changes to the Constitution. And you spoke in the beginning of your remarks about tolerance and diversity within Georgia, within a large sense of a national identity of what it means to be Georgian. Given that perspective as president and with a wide sense of Georgia's identity, what advice would you give to those who are in the process of shaping amendments to the Constitution?
Well, actually, yesterday we started a new process in relationship on the constitutional issues, exactly targeted for what you have just mentioned right now. It's an effort to try to build a consensus, an effort to show to ourselves and our partners around the world that we, as political leaders, do understand that Constitution is beyond the party lines. That Constitution is the document that creates Georgia as a state, and it is above one or the other party. That this is the overarching rule of the game and not the principles of any of the parties engaged. So, because the parties, they differ in their principles, in their values, and that's the great thing that we have different political parties, and it's great that they differ. It's great that they compete. But the overarching document should be something based on the consensus and not based on the values or political vision of one or the other party. So with this emotion, I mean, I had a meeting with political representatives from oppositional parties, and I said, and we agreed to try to suggest to the ruling party the changes in their draft of the Constitution, which would be accepted by everyone. This is not an easy effort, because that means that the different parties have to agree upon some articles which they understand in a different way. But I said that I would share their attitudes. I would put my vision behind me. I would look at what they develop, and I would basically share their unified view, because my vision is secondary, and the agreement and consensus is the main thing. So with this value of having the consensus as a top value, and then having your vision as a part of the consensus, but not the thing that determines the consensus, is the effort that we have started right now. I hope the document will be developed pretty soon. It is an amendment to the constitutional draft that has been created by the Georgian Dream. And we will share this with Georgian Dream, and I hope that the emotion and the feeling that we have to do something beyond ourselves. We have to do something that is beyond our party lines, that is beyond our time in governance, that is for generations and not for us to utilize. I think that this emotion could be somehow nurtured in this environment. Well, I hope so, and we'll see what will be the outcome, because the constitutional process has been driven to some kind of a deadlock, because this is the draft that is basically signed only by one party consensus. And I think we have to make efforts to overcome this, and with making those efforts, I think that will create a great example for Georgians, but I think also for our partners, be it in Strasbourg, be it in Venice, to show them that we can grow ourselves beyond our small identities, be it individual politicians or be it political parties. We are in the middle of this effort. I hope that it will be successful.
Well, great. Well, thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
I'm reminded of the drafting of the U.S. Constitution, where our founding fathers warned against the tyranny of the majority, and
Said
instead,
the purpose of the Constitution is to protect the minority, and any truly democratic society, whoever's in power now has to assume that they will not be in power another time, and therefore the rules should be good for the minority when they are in that position. So I think that's certainly been our experience as well. Mr. President, I want to thank you very much for your time, for being with us. Please join me in thanking President Margvelashvili.